Good morning, everyone. True Zero Emissions here. So I was just trying to think about how, like, when starting out in learning, right? I'll say starting out and learning about radiant free energy research, if I call it that. My mind is trying to figure out what the limits are, right? What's the limits? What do we know? What can be done and how? What can be done and how can it be done? So when I'm looking on the internet and I'm researching and reading, I'm looking for how can I expand my imagination to see things in new ways. Now, a lot of the internet seems like it's trying to put the imagination in a box. What do I mean by that? It's trying to define the parameters of how to look at something and say that this is the only way to see it. So I think what I understood, because my teachers taught me this, because my teachers knew that I was interested in learning without end. We're just an open learning where it just keeps going, right? Not a limit, not like this is it. Okay, I want to keep going. What's beyond, right? So therefore I was able to be guided, or just naturally was guided. And my teachers just were also liked learning. That's why they were teaching. So so in my journey of learning what's possible, I feel like the foundation was always knowing that anything is possible that I want to do. So if there's something we want to do, I'll just give an extreme example. How do we make something levitate with very little energy input? That's an example. Someone would say that's impossible, or someone could say that. That's irrelevant, though. It's irrelevant. The relevancy is if the goal, if what we want to do, if we're going to say the word goal, the goal would be to learn the theory and philosophy of how to think about something in a way that allows that understanding to be applied to the experiment, right? Nature has so much energy, so how do we use nature's forces in a way that allows nature to do work, right? Let me think about this. So when I started this video right now, I was always trying to find, when I was researching a lot in the beginning of this channel, I was thinking about, like, how can I think about what's possible, and how do I find what's possible? How do I find others that are looking for, if I say, the infinite possibility of the machinery of the universe, right? Like, how can we use the forces of nature to do something that we want to do? So in researching on the internet, there's going to be a lot of people seeming to define how to think about something. So what I had to do was kind of extract everywhere it was saying, where I felt I was experiencing open possibilities. And I was kind of like editing this story together of parts of relationships between different ways of thinking and seeing, and in a way that can be meaningful to something that I am interested in working with, in terms of experimentally speaking, right? Okay, so if you're on the internet, I feel like everyone knows this already, but I'm just going to say the obvious. If anyone on the internet, because there's a lot of people that will say you can do all these things, then it sounds like they're saying, oh, they really get it, that this is like anything's possible, right? And then suddenly there'll be like these severe limitations. And I'm like, oh, where did that come from? This is totally different. It's almost like someone else started writing, right? It's like a different person started writing and saying, you can't, you can't, you can't. But it started with you can, you can, you can. So how do we get from you can to you can't? So what I would do is go on the internet and collect all the you can, you can, you can, and collect all those, bring them together, and then express that in writing, express it in my thoughts in a video that I'm sharing about an experiment I want to do. and expressing it experimentally in something that I'm working on myself. So I'm just sharing my process of how I approach and think about learning, and approach thinking about thinking, and approach thinking about the experiment, both before the experiment is started in terms of the physical experiment, and also in terms of the experiment as it's being as the experiment is being interacted with in the process of making the experiment, actually conducting the experiment. Okay, so that's some thoughts for today. And for anyone that's on the internet saying things like you can't, you can't, what philosophers and psychologists say is people that were told they couldn't do things, there's a tendency to go out into the world and tell others that they can't do things too. And it's just not true. That's not the way that the universe works. You can tell the universe you can't do that. It's going to do it anyway. Because energy is always moving, and we don't create energy, even though we're paying for the implication, the implied idea that we're paying for a power company to make power for us. We all learned in school that you can't make energy, and you cannot destroy energy. So when we pay for energy, what we're actually paying for is a signal, I think. This is my understanding. We're paying for a signal that releases or activates the energy at our homes and takes all the megawatts of energy around us and it translates it into our circuits. So the free energy community, if I say it that way, the free energy community seems to be interested in one way, is to learn how to think about the relationship of releasing the energy, if I say it that way, activating and releasing and interacting with the energy that's around us, giving ourselves our own signal, if I say it that way, so that we can have energy for ourselves instead of paying for that same signal that's just releasing the energy at our homes anyway, right? So if the energy is coming from home, why would we pay for a signal way over there? And then it's dangerous, people are getting hurt, those workers get hurt all the time, they're getting hurt. So if they don't need to risk their lives, but that could be said also about gasoline and petrol, where people, a lot of people die in the extraction of the oil. That's a very, very dangerous process. And millions of people die from the cancers that come from, the fuel, just the use of fuel, and you can see it on the signs. The signs are not right in front of you necessarily. They're kind of off to the side. You have to kind of look for them around the pump. But those signs do make it very clear that gasoline does cause cancer, and that breathing the fumes causes cancer. And look at all the different cancers that people get. So if you look at Aubrey de Grey, who's researching and studying reversing aging, well, he words it a different way. Reversing age-related. I don't know if he calls it disease, but it's basically to give humans the ability to live a healthy life. And we know that the cells in the body all have a memory of a perfect young healthy cell. So it makes sense that if we put our minds to it, that we can find a way to reverse aging. And that's what's happening right now. So Aubrey de Grey became a biologist, if that's the correct word to use. I think it's the right word to use, because he was interested in kind of like studying the aging process, and then also interested in what can be done about it. Like, can we do something else? Do we have to, instead of deteriorating the cells as they copy one another, can the cells be given the environment that would nurture the cell to be young and healthy again, which we call reversing aging, right? And there's a book on that. There's books available on that. There's a book called Ending Aging. It's called Ending Aging by Aubrey de Grey. I do believe that to be his book. So anyway, yeah, so let me think if there's anything else I want to say in this video. So yeah, there's nothing that's impossible. When people talk about impossibility is really irrelevant, because we're building a better world. We all are. We're all building a better world every day, with every breath, with every thought. We're trying to be better persons, better people, more kind, more giving, more collaborating. And we know that fighting is a dead end, right? Because the weapons get stronger and more powerful on each side and cause more and more harm and damage. And the people that are fighting the wars, in a way, like, okay, so what's America, right? America, I was reading that America is basically the Constitution, right? The Constitution is an expression of the essence of what makes this country, right? So the Constitution, it could be said, I think it could be said that when people fight for the country, they're fighting for the Constitution. They're fighting for those rights, for the philosophy of what is believed in, right? So a way of living, right? Not a way of dying, but a way of living. So how do we all live together? Not just as a country, but as a world, right? We have so many countries in the world, so much potential for collaboration, right? And we're all trying our best to collaborate because we know fighting is not going to be a solution, right? We all know that. We know that violence is not a solution. We know that if we can instead of getting better and better at fighting and destroying, we can get better and better at communicating and creating relationships, creating connection, creating value in life, right? And this all has to be taught from the earliest of ages, the earliest, right away. And we also have to learn it ourselves, too, because if we weren't taught that ourselves, we have a responsibility to learn that so that we can teach it, so that children can learn from the adults, and so that we can know for ourselves to set a good example of how to care for this planet and how to care for one another and how to collaborate, not how to fight. We're not trying to fight, right? Now, I know people take self-defense classes and some people carry weapons to protect themselves, and that's because there's a lot of desperation in the world. I'm going to say it that way because, when we hear about these crimes that happen, it's very complicated and it's not an easy subject to talk about. I still remember, and I've mentioned this before, I was watching presidential debates from long ago, and there was a president that said he was against the death penalty. And then someone said, if someone raped your wife, are you telling me you would not want the person to be given the death penalty? And that person could not answer the question. He could not answer that question. And, my thoughts on the death penalty is, we know that there's mental illness. We know that there's desperation in the world. I don't think killing a person that's a killer, I don't see that as a solution, because isn't that kind of what war is a little bit? War is saying we have to kill, right? Like it's saying the army has to go fight for something, right? To protect the country, right? To protect the Constitution. I think that's what we're protecting. We protect the people, right? But even within countries, there's people fight each other and there's terrible crimes happening. So how can we think about being more peaceful together, right? And how can there be enough for everyone, right? How can there be enough for everyone? So there's less desperation, right? And I'm not saying that it's really hard to talk about crime and criminals, and it's something that I tend to not talk about, and it's really triggering for a lot of people, including myself. But I think talking about it is relevant because, one of the things that's in the Constitution is we're not supposed to have cruel and unusual punishment, right? But if you look at the death penalty, I haven't seen one of them that is not cruel and unusual. And then that's supposed to be, I guess, subject to the attorney and judge's interpretation. But if you just read about any of those, it's really hard to read about. But because it's happening in our world, and because we all are one and we all are connected, it just makes sense to me. And I'm not saying that people that commit those crimes should ever be let free. I'm not saying that. I don't have a solution for it. But I definitely don't think that killing people, right, I don't think that's a solution. So, and it almost sets an example saying that when we don't know what else to do, we just end the life, right? I don't see that as some people say that the way that, I don't know how to think and talk about this yet. I'm still learning how to, which is why I'm attempting to talk about it. But, let me put the question on myself. If someone killed all the people that I love in my life, would I want them to have the death penalty? That I can just turn that question on myself, right, to make it difficult for myself to answer that. What I would say is, no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't wish death to them. I would wish that they got help. Now, do I want them to suffer? How does that person's suffering help the people that are not here anymore? It doesn't change anything. So I think really what would be important is I think this is what psychologists do, is they study what is going on, what's happening. They find out there's a lot of abuse connected to crime, right? There's a lot of abuse connected to the people that are what we think of as criminals. They've gone through a lot of trauma, and that's like almost 100% of the time. Right? So if someone's been traumatized as a child and they don't even think anything of it, that's just their life. They thought of it that way, right? They went through a lot of abuse, and then now they're committing crimes and they're hurting people in varying degrees, right? In all the different degrees of harm that can be caused. And then to take that person and to end their life, what does that really do? I mean, what is that supposed to do? Is it supposed to scare people to go, oh, well, look, that person died, so we shouldn't do that? Or, I mean, is that what it's supposed to do? Is it supposed to say, I don't know. Again, I don't know how to think about this or talk about it exactly. I'm just trying to figure this out. I'm trying to process it. I don't think killing killers, or someone's a killer or a crime person, people have different views on this. There's people that think those people should actually be wiped off the planet, right? And a lot of people say that. They go, oh no, they deserve to suffer bad, right? And if you look at the death penalties and you see the description of what's actually taking place biologically to the body when the person's being killed, right, in the different ways they've been killed, that's very, to me, it's very descriptive of the rage inside of the person that wants them to suffer, right? It's an expression of that. But then we have no cruel and unusual punishment. And I've never seen a death penalty that's not cruel and unusual, right? Of these death penalties, I don't think there is. And it seems like death is cruel and unusual in itself, especially when it's intentional, right? Even if someone's committed a crime. So I have no idea what I'm going to call this video, but avoiding this, I talk about all these other things, experimentation, and look what this is linked to. I think when we're talking about impossibility, and then I was thinking of like internet bullies, and I was thinking of that. I think that's how I got into this, talking about this, because I think I see people that are telling people they can't do anything, everything's impossible. You can't do any of these things. Flight, electrogravitics is impossible. We have to push air. Right, we have to push air. That's the only way we can fly. We can't fly with high voltage. But students are already doing it all over the world in colleges, right? So, but people still will go out there and say, you can't do it. You can't, it's impossible. And they'll say, you can't get over unity. You can't get more out of something than you put in it. The universe works that way, though. So that's like saying the universe doesn't work, right? And then, oh no, the universe doesn't count. We're talking about circuits that we make. Well, we exist in a universe, so you can't say the universe doesn't count. Everything exists in the universe. It's in it. So I guess when I think of people on the internet bullying others, I imagine that they might have been bullied themselves or told they can't do things. And it's easier, philosophers and psychologists say, that it's easier to repeat what was done to a person. Like if something was done to you, if someone's been bullied, it's easier to just do that to others and send that message, right? Just to keep behaving the way that a person was treated. But if our real goal is solution-oriented worldwide collaboration, then we can think together about solutions and work together to create a new way of seeing things and a new way of seeing relationships, between understanding ourselves, understanding one another. Anyway, true zero emissions, everyone. We'll see you soon. I have no idea what this video is going to be called.